Hi there, welcome to the Halftime Huddle. I'm excited about today because, and I'll tell you a little bit more about it later on as we get closer to the time. We've got a lovely guest to talk to. But basically, just for those people who've stumbled across this by accident, this is the Halftime Huddle. It's my opportunity halfway through the week to support you by sharing lovely conversations and also sharing some tips and tricks to help you when we start off and with all good intentions at the beginning of the week and we hit the hump day Wednesday and all of a sudden life happens, or as they say, shift happens to take away some of the the shit that might happen, but basically all kinds of weird stuff. And so this is a little bit of an opportunity to take a breath halfway through, listen to a good conversation, listen to some tips, and ready for the next stage of the week. So as I've sort of teased a little bit about who we've done, we might have seen some of the posts. We have Susanna Reay, who we've been sort of circling each other for a while. I think we first met or came across each other with Upreneur summits and Upreneur with Chris Ducker, who is now doing a number of other things. So do check out Chris Ducker and his work. But we've been circling each other for a while. And it came to a head last November when I turned up and came and signed up to a summit she was running. It's the SuperFast Authority Summit. And I'd love, I'm surely she's going to talk a little bit about it, but it was a wonderful week. Lots of really interesting people to talk to. And I thought she would be a lovely woman to come along to talk to us at the Halftime Huddle. So without too much of fumbling and stumbling, I'll bring in Susanna Reay to talk to you. So hi, Susanna, welcome.
Hello, and thank you for having me here.
It's been, like I said, we have been circling you, watching you change, and one of the things I'd love to hear is all about that. You started off in one route, and you've now changed your tack a little bit. So I'm always interested in what I call, what's not just me, what I call the origin story. So I'd love to hear a little bit about sort of how you started, why you started, and how you've pivoted and changed. So, what's your origin story?
Oh, my origin story can be as complex or as simple, probably, as you'd like it to be, because the very much origin of starting to work in the business coaching space and helping and supporting clients actually started for me back in 2002. When I started on my journey of living and working around the world, doing different things. And this was obviously way before the pandemic, way before everyone else was working online. But because I was moving internationally, it was my default way of staying connected. So my kids got to know their grandparents over, well, it was Skype back then as well. And I started working with people, and the people who I were working with were very much the entrepreneurial startups. They had unique expertise that they wanted to show and display, but they weren't really sure how to do that and how to do it in the online space. And over the time, I realized as well that it wasn't over time. I'm going to go back even further in time in terms of origin story. Is when I was about 15, 16, I realized I was actually introverted in nature. And this is when I was deep dive into the library, because that's what we had at the time, no internet. It was the library. I was reading books on psychology, and I understood the real essence of what being introverted meant, which was how you harness your energy. And as I was going through my working life, I realized that when I'd been in real offices and team spaces, I would be exhausted. I was even exhausted coming home from school back when I was 15, 16. That was one of those recognition pieces for me. So as I was then moving around the world, and I've lived across 3 continents, 5 countries, 20 cities, like crazy. I'm not the digital nomad. I just completely moved my house and my family and live in a different location. But what I realized was those who I was connecting with were more introverted in nature, like myself. They had big ideas, big thoughts, and they were thinking, like, how do I put this out in the world? How do I get more visible? And that led me, when I sort of circumnavigated the world and came back to the UK, where I am presently, in 2015. And my focus at that point was very much on helping introverted entrepreneurs, because, like everyone else, I'm sure you hear, it's like, oh, you've got a niche. And to begin with, it was women, female, introverted entrepreneurs, because we've got to be really precise and make it down and create that way. And I soon realized that when we're introverted in nature, we need to approach how we show up, how we get visible, in slightly different ways. And this did absolutely lead me to writing my book that's behind me, The Introvert Way Roadmap, that I published in 2021. And that was a result of seeing there was a lot of extroverted practices going on. I remember being told by a business coach in 2015, you need to book out your whole role. You've got to have 10 calls a day, and then you'll be booked solid and everything's good. If I have more than 2 or 3 conversations in a day of that nature, I'm exhausted. And there's different ways of showing up. And I love the fact that now online, we can totally, just like we're doing right now, is we can come live, we can optimize and use video to show up and be visible, which can then be repeated and watched later at leisure. And all of this then grew. And as Mark mentioned, I have pivoted along the way, because there's one thing that's sure in life, and that is change. And as much as, yes, absolutely, I'm very introverted in nature, but I also realized the online space, and particularly the small business space, is very female dominated, actually. But I didn't want to make my space gender specific. And this was also in line with my teen at the time, also exploring, going, they didn't want to be gender specific. And it gave me this huge awareness that, why am I creating a binary space? So that moment I chucked out the window and went, no, I'm not just dealing with women. I know I'm a woman. I love working with men as much as women, and everyone who associates in between, because one of my core values is very much about inclusivity. And traveling around the world, the phrase that's taken me around the world is smile and the world smiles with you. And I'm like, that includes everyone. It doesn't need to be that. So my focus, and which led me to even running the summit last November and SuperFast Authority, is about diversity and inclusion, because I believe everyone has brilliant ideas, and those ideas need a space to be shared and to go into depth. And we really investigated what grows your authority, what makes people stop and listen to you, what is it about those elements. And there was many different angles during the week that we investigated, but the core for me as well is about making many voices heard. And this is why during the week it wasn't just about who are the speakers. Like normal summits, they're all about listen to this speaker, then listen to that speaker, and then listen to the next one. And I was like, no, I want to hear the voices in the room. Because if I did attend an in-person conference, which I've started to do a little bit more, but they do completely exhaust me, I will admit. But it was the conversations in the corridors that I found the magic. And I wanted to bring that into the online space. And this is why I did a 25-75 split. Between 25% of the time was the conversation kickstarter, the speaker who had a big idea. And the rest of the time, the 75%, was on those who attended to show up and share their view, their perspective. Because I feel generally the world is a better place the more perspectives we hear.
Absolutely, and I like I said, I signed up thinking I'd dip in and out and see, see what was going on. It was nice that it was well planned in terms of. I love the way you planned it in terms of the number of sessions in between, and it wasn't a full on. Which again, I would imagine comes from your ability to manage people's energy. It wasn't full on. Let's do 5 days worth of this full on, full videos, full talking, full interaction. It was a talk and interaction, a break, a talk and interaction, and a break. And I thought, well, I can dip in and out, and I got hooked. I think I went to all of them. I got hooked, and it was exactly what you said. It was the interaction between the people in the room. It was the breakout rooms. It was the talking. It was the ideas that you shared and the ideas that were raised by the person doing the talk and the experience and stuff like that. And it was just the links that you made afterwards was amazing. So like I said, I was hooked, and I spent the whole week going to all of them. So it was really really good. And like you say, I think one of the things that you sort of sometimes you can miss when you're doing it online and doing this kind of stuff is sitting behind the scenes, sitting behind so many. You see the webinars where people come along and they're in the front scene. You don't even know who's around. You can see a little bit of a chat box on the thingy, and that's rubbish interaction and rubbish. 9 times out of 10, you probably don't go to see them live and you watch them afterwards. But this was very much, if you're in the room, this is where the magic happens. So thank you very much for that. That was well worth it. And I hear, am I right? You're doing it again this year?
I am planning on running it again. It will be in November, the week starting the 10th of November. I'm still playing around with what the focus topic is, because one of the things that I've had, so it's always been around the topic of authority, but last year it was about SuperFast Authority, like how can you really speed it up? And I'm now playing with different topic ideas because I can have another word in front of authority. And so I'm just sort of landing, and some of that's down to who will be the speakers, what are those ideas. So that's why I'm not releasing what the word in front is, because I'm holding my, I might want to change that, because I'm in the process right now of having conversations, talking with people, of thinking, well, around this topic, and then what's the connecting thread? Because what I really enjoyed, and again, this is me being more introverted in nature, deep dive conversations. Let's not have fluff. And I start things dead on top of the hour. And it was really funny. At the start of the week, only my clients were there right at the top of the hour. By the end of the week, everyone was like, no, I know Susanna, if she says she's starting at the top of hour, she's starting. There's none of this, isn't the weather nice for a few minutes? I'm like, no, we've only got 60 minutes. Let's go in and do that. But it was really interesting for those like yourself who did get addicted, absolutely, and the conversation thread continued, is to see the change and the progression that also happened in people's thoughts. So when they were coming then to the sessions near the end of the week, they were a lot more confident in what they were doing, how to present themselves, because they'd also had all those interactions. So they've been practicing in the breakout rooms, maybe with people they've never met before. And it's all about this practice and implementation. And right at the end as well, I had a co-author, Harriet Matty, who helped create the SuperFast Authority guide, which ended up being a 36 insights guide. You can absolutely grab it. It's free to download. And it was just looking at that progression, and equally the inclusivity piece. People like yourself, Mark, you are quoted within it because you joined in. So I was about raising everyone's authority. It wasn't just like, hey, look at these established people who you might know the names of, but there's really clever people in every single room. And I wanted to highlight just that amazing brilliance, because I find every business owner I speak to has such wonderful views and different ways of looking at things. And they've always got something to add to the conversation that's worth listening to.
Absolutely. I mean, to be honest, you're singing to the choir here. Very much, the rationale behind what we do at Air Game, and the rationale behind what we do here at the halftime huddle is very much that there's an untapped wealth of experience and expertise and knowledge and support in your peers. Basically, peer support is unfortunately, and I'm sort of here to try and sort of fly the flag, is undervalued and not recognised as a good value, and that kind of thing that came across in the SuperFast Authority summit was my little sort of aha moment. It was turning in, spending the time, like you say. So many of these summits are just sort of speaker fest. You go there and it's just exchange of knowledge, knowledge, and we do know now with the AI sort of explosion that knowledge and information is easily accessible, and it's not information that's important; it's the interactions with the individuals, the humans and stuff. Yeah.
And content is overwhelming. Like we're in like this avalanche of content at the moment, and I'm like, people say, oh, but AI is great because it creates the new content for you so you don't have to. But I'm like, does your audience need more stuff to consume, or do they need less that's simpler and higher quality? Because you want to create messaging that cuts through and really makes the impact. And this is why this is now my focus area. And my clients started calling me the authority architect in that way, because we were creating the frameworks for their authority, developing their thought leadership in terms of what do they want to be known for. But one of my biggest tasks is always to look at how can we simplify it. Like, I don't want you to write a 20,000 word something if we can do it as a one pager, because actually most people these days, particularly if you're working coaching, consulting, you're being hired to simplify things for your people. Basically, they don't want to go the same journey you've been on. They're like, hey, fast track me. I want to get there faster. So we need to show that in a way that really makes sense. So yeah, you can talk lots, but visuals are great as well. I'm a huge visual person, and that's sort of backed by some of the science as well. That I think there's a lot of research that says about 65% of us are visual learners. There's a picture superiority effect that says 80% of us remember information more when we've seen it as a visual rather than words alone. So when we look at all these statistics, we're going, well, why aren't we bringing visuals more into the space? Which is why even behind me, for those watching on the video, can see visuals, color. I'm all about bringing ideas to life.
Absolutely, and as you were talking about visuals, I'm thinking, yes, I remember you've got quite a nice background behind you, so it seems a shame not to waste the opportunity to share that, which is why I made you the main focus for a while. But yeah,
people always ask, they say, is that real? And I'm like, yes, and I can scoot backwards and I can put one of these books out of the shelf, but I have got one ready for later.
No, good for later, and that's a little bit of a teaser for later on for those who are watching this and want to stay for the long haul. Then definitely do stay along, because if you like books, we have a special sort of section right at the end, which is quite good. And one of the things I liked about your story is the fact that you lean into your strength, and it also and I like to, I'm a comic book geek, and I love to talk about sort of superpowers and also the kryptonite. And one of the things I like and come across is people could potentially say that introversion is your kryptonite. Would you sort of say that in some respects, and you've turned it into your superpower? Would you agree?
Totally. Absolutely, because I think with anything we can decide, we are in control of what we wish to be. So some people might go, oh, but I'm introverted and I'm going to pretend that introversion means I'm shy. They're not. It's completely different things. But introversion really is about how you harness your energies So I've gone, no, well, how does that mean I want to work? How can I work with that way? And interestingly enough, many people now do actually go, oh, yes, well, I'm introverted. I'm like, well, of course. And this was one of the things I realized as well. Whereas when I started talking about the introvert entrepreneur back in 2015, I could probably name, I think there was 3 of us basically, one in Australia, one in America, and me in Europe, talking about introversion and the introverted entrepreneur specifically. Now, if you look up on LinkedIn or wherever, you'll come across thousands of people seeing it as a niche. But actually, I don't see it as a niche anymore. And this is one of the reasons why I've stepped away from leading that, because over 50% of us are probably introverted in nature. And it's a spectrum. So you've got introversion, extroversion, how much you balance your energy. We all need time away. Even the most extroverted person eventually needs to have some time out. So it is like, lean into how do you want to work and what does that look like for you? So I know lots of people who are setting up and running their own in-person events and they're going, that's the best thing ever. But I actually went, well, no, that's not the best thing for me. Whereas running a week long, and yeah, a lot of people ask me, are you crazy running a week long online event? But I did absolutely set it up. It was an hour on, an hour off, an hour on, an hour off, because I needed that. But equally, I'd learnt that a lot of us in the small business space are equally in need of that balance of how do you harness your energy. And I actually gain energy from conversations like this, which are deep dive one-to-one, which is why I set up the interactions. It was small group breakouts. I don't like big conversations because I feel you're just missing too much. So it is about really thinking about how do you want to be and owning it. And that's been one of my biggest realizations, probably over the time when we both first started connecting, Mark, was I was like, I can just be me. At the end of the day, I don't have to pretend to be someone else. And what does that look like? So I can hold true in my ideas, my thoughts, and others will actually be interested in that. So yeah, it's lean into who you are and what you do and how you want to be. And because then that will build your rapport with your audience. And interestingly enough, rapport was one of those things I think we mentioned along the way with SuperFast Authority, because things like visibility and credibility came out. But I feel rapport is, feeling the energy of the person that you can absolutely do on video like we are now. And people can say, because I quite often have clients come to me and go, I loved your energy. That's why I want to work with you. And so I think about all those missed opportunities for people who say, I've never got on video. Because if you are serving people directly, at some point you're likely to be face to face, whether it's video or in person, and they will sense your energy. So why not show it on video first?
Absolutely, and I second the idea of a video. I mean, I used to do this quite a lot, and I'm coming back to doing it sort of again, and to get myself back into the swing of things. November I went live every day just to get back to the idea of doing this, and video is definitely a great way of showing your energy, showing your personality, showing your and it's there's a lot of people out there still talking about sort of and this is me getting almost a little bit of a soapbox for a while. A lot of people talking about stop doing your ums, stop doing your ahs, making sure you're very clear in your stuff. But people like to see people who are human. So not worrying about whether you stumble over a couple of words or as a word sort of mispronounce some of the words or whatever you want to do. It's just being out there and in front of people in front is something that's easy to do nowadays, and you should be spending more time on there. That's me on my soapbox. So like I said, keep an eye out, and one of the things we'll do, I'll share in the comments below where you find this, where you can find more information about Susanna later on, because definitely do keep an eye out for the the whatever authority segment it is, super fast, super slow, super speedy, super whatever. Do keep an eye out for that, because it's a great experience, and it's the interactions in between that is the where the magic happens. And I've got a lot of connections now, and I just noticed on live we have Tanya Blanco sort of watching us, saying hi. So hi, Tanya, for watching. For those people who are going to come and watch this, Tanya is coming to speak as well, so that'll be lovely. I'm looking forward to that. But she was there. She was the connections. The connections you can make on this thing is brilliant. And like I said, so many of the other online experiences, you go there, you watch, you don't know who's around, who's watching with you. I made loads of connections in there, so do recommend that you keep an eye on that as well.
I must admit, linked to that, I've been loving watching the ripple effect post the live week in November, as I see everyone supporting the LinkedIn posts, connecting and engaging, because obviously I was in every room, and I'm then watching that. And that just brings me so much joy, seeing the ripple effect of connection. So it's fantastic. Tanya's coming in, and she's in Switzerland. I know Tanya well. So yeah, it's global as well. It's not just UK centric. Yes, I run it in the UK time zone because, hey, that's when I'm awake. And not everything has to be US based. So it's a European UK based summit, basically. I'll just put that out there if anyone's listening and it's late at night and they want to join in live. I'm like, no, the live sessions are within European time zones.
Yes, absolutely, and because Europe and the US also have some kind of crossover, the afternoon ones fit quite nicely into.
Yeah, we had Australians first thing and Americans at the end of the day. So
absolutely,
as you say, it crosses over. But you got to be there all the time because
I did get to. I was lucky that I was there at all of them, which is brilliant. One of the other things, I loved about sort of the way you've sort of pivoted as well is you talked about sort of moving away from a binary type. I deal with men, I deal with women, I deal with X, Y, Z. But one of the other things I noticed through the evolution of your stuff is, like, you talk about visibility, and you're very good at distilling the authority out of people. So introverts and non-introverts is like I said, is another binary distinction and categorization of people that you're sort of pulling away from. So I loved hearing that, and how you are starting to help and support people to distill their knowledge into, like you said, these visible frameworks. I'm like you say, talk about the ripple effect. I'm seeing the magic touch you have amongst some of the people in there, and seeing their knowledge and their experience being distilled into these either books or what ways of distilling their expertise into frameworks that they can, like you say, simplify some of their ways that people deal with. So I'm loving seeing that. One of the other things that I like to, we're in a tool at the moment, and one of the things we before we came on, we had a lovely little discussion about how we could use the tool, because we're both experts, we both use this tool for stuff. Yes, indeed, inner geek. I'm an inner geek too. There are a number of tools, but it's not just I have a number of geeky techy tools, and a number of also sort of old school sort of analog schools. I'm a pen and paper person as well. So stationery. If someone shows me a new piece of stationery, I'm loving that, and I love sort of seeing behind you all the stuff as well. But day to day, there are some things I use. I'm using this tool all the time. I'm in Zoom meetings, I'm in these kind of sessions, or lots of stuff. So it's a tool that I spend a lot of time. I'm just interested to, one of the things we like to share here is just showing what people do day to day, because that's how the focus keeps going. So what would you say was one of your favorite tools?
I must admit, and when I was thinking about this question, is say the tool that we're sat in right now, I do also use for recording my trainings, but that's not every day these days because they're sort of in a vault now. But actually, in Instagram and creating reels, I have a lot of fun in that, creating those mini videos, putting the captions on, and I find it a really easy way to start my short videos. And I wrote a blog, oh gosh, was it last year? No, the year before, is how I went from the confidence of showing up on Reels to doing a keynote on stage. Because I find, again, I actually like the challenge when you've only gotten, when I started doing them, I think they were still only 30 seconds. And then you had 60 seconds, and now it's 90 seconds. But YouTube Shorts are still 60 seconds. And I quite like the challenge that you need to bring it down to a succinct 60-second message, which you can then share out. So I do use quite often that's my starting point for a lot of my video content in terms of where I'm heading out to. Another tool I do use all the time in my coaching world is actually the Google Docs and Google Sheets. And this is more because I do a lot of like co-creation with my clients. So as you were mentioning that I help them distill what it is they do, they might be writing out things. We're looking at their framework. So whether it's inside the Google Doc, the Google Sheet that they're writing something, or we move across, and a lot of my clients might be working in Canva, but you can also comment, you can go in, you can put direct notes directly into these digital workbooks. And for me, that it just really speeds up the process. So rather than waiting for a call and someone having to describe what they're doing, you can see it in action. So again, it's this interactive piece of the tools that I really like and that I lean into sort of quite often. And I use, I would say they're probably the ones that I use the most every day. That, again, I've tried doing different things. And during the summit, what did work really well is we use Miro as an interactive whiteboard. And that is another place that I do like to use to set up. You can draw things, you can be very interactive. So they're probably my sort of three main areas.
I must admit, as an inner geek, and I'm going to just bring a little comment from that's my trouble and strife. She knows that I'm not an inner geek at all. No, nothing inner about it whatsoever. Fully out and proud. But yeah, definitely, I love the way you used Miro within the activity as well, and it gave us something to last the extensive of the week. You could go back and you could interact, and it was also another way you could share and interact with people. You could put your comments on the Miro board. So hats up. It was a stunning way of using Miro, and it's made me sort of revisit sort of how I can potentially use that as well. So
for me, everything just has to be interactive. This is the theme, like listening to us in this conversation. I'm like, with my clients, it's interactive. It's not you do the work and then you hand in your homework. It's very much that co-creation. The summit was about co-creation. I think together we created, by the end, what does SuperFast Authority mean to everyone in the space? And I guess I am also a bit of a speed geek in that sense, which is why I like the Reels. Like, if we can be short and simple and fast, I think that wins over super long things. But at the same time, I will totally deep dive into a subject that I will fully research it. So for me, that's something I've seen on socials, that it's either short or it's extra long. Like that mid-length doesn't seem to hit home quite as well as it's either short or it's long, because if somebody's fascinated by what you're talking about or what they're sharing, they'll happily listen for an hour, for 2 hours, for 3 hours. Or they just want 60 seconds.
No, absolutely, and I think you're very right in that the short, sort of sharp, single point, make a point well, and then move on, sort of thing, is where the reels and the TikToks and the shorts and etc. is you can have a look, find it, get on with it, and if you need more, then there's more elsewhere. Yeah. So I love the
try before you buy aspect, isn't it? Yes. It's like, have a taster. Like if you're in the supermarket and you've been given that tray, they don't do that very often these days, but it used to happen.
Oh yes,
you'd have trays and you could sample the food and you go, oh yes, I'd have that. But it's that feeling, isn't it? So that people can get a flavour of you before they come deeper into your world.
No, absolutely, and also yeah, very much, and I sort of I was nodding very hard when you were talking about those people where they get information overload. I come across a number of people who have like the 47 steps to X or the 24 ways of doing Z, and I'm thinking, you're not making it simple for me. If I have to go through 40 odd steps to do X, Y, Z, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to stop at number one and move on. So it's nice to have very short, very succinct, very topical and very focused tips, tricks, whatever, because that's what we want from the people out there is
and this
short and sweet.
As well, like one of the experts out there at leaning in, seeing what people connect with is actually Mel Robbins, because she started with a whole 5-second rule. That was a throwaway comment in her first TEDx talk that she then suddenly thought, wow, that's what everyone's connected with. So she rebranded her whole business and went down that route. And now she's just published her latest book, Let Them. And again, that came out of, she said that in an interview, in a talk, I can't remember exactly what it was, but her community picked up on the phrase. People are even getting like their arms tattooed with Let Them. And she's like, this has become a thing. So now, yeah, absolutely, I need to write the book on it. But it's that simplicity, 2 words, let them. And then people go, oh, that sounds interesting. And this is where, when you look at who has gained that authority, credibility, rapport, it's normally because their message is simple. Simon Sinek, find your why. Everyone can remember that. James Clear, Atomic Habits. It's something really clear and to the point. And I think this is where most experts in their space can talk passionately for hours and hours and hours about their thing. But normally you've bored the pants off whoever's listening long before, because they don't have that depth of passion, because they're coming towards you. They want the simplified version to help them get the solution they want. So that's my quest eternally, is to simplify things, which is quite hard actually at the end of the day to do.
No, I can't remember who I was talking to. I think I was talking to my daughter, who was trying to write something and create something. I think she's a journalist, and she works for the an online magazine around local government, and there was a step she needed to talk about when we were talking about some of the things going on, and it reminded me of the quote, I think, and we did a deep dive myself, because I'm a geek. If I find a quote, I have to find out who it came from. But there's a quote that's attributed to Mark Twain that isn't originated from Mark Twain, but about I wrote you this long letter because I didn't have time to write you a shorter one. I think it's originally attributed to Mr. Pascal of the Pascal Triangle and the I think therefore I am, apparently. So it's the same sort of thing. It takes time and energy to simplify and shorten things and explain it in a nice, succinct way. I think Einstein's also talking about that as well. If you can't explain it simply, then you don't know it well enough. So yes. It is a trick, and it is something that people are looking for. They're looking for something simple to hang their ideas, because essentially it's like an onion. You once you see the outside, you peel it, and it becomes deeper and deeper, and you can then start to expand on it. But essentially, they just want to see the first level.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
They want to know, I need an onion, I want to buy an onion, that's what I want. Oh, it's going to make me cry along the way. Oh dear, but hey, I like the outcome at the end, so I'm going to buy that onion and chop it up.
Absolutely. One of the other things, essentially, we talked about onion. We could talk about this for a long time. And this is the beauty. This is the beauty of simplicity. That starting with something simple spins off. The human brain has a habit of spinning off and making connections left, right, and center. You talk about onion, and in my silly head, I have the Shrek clip about the the donkey and conversation talking about he wants onions have layers. I like an onion in, and etc. It's the same sort of thing. So we have a connection. So if you make a certain simple steps at the beginning, the framework you have, these spin off and like a prism, like a what are those things we have where they have the fractal thing? You start off with an image, and all of a sudden you get deeper and deeper and deeper. And that's, I think, the beauty of some of the work you do with people by distilling their frameworks into the simple starting points that expand and expand down into like a fractal nature of and help and support. So you get hooked on the initial piece. Yeah. So brilliant.
Very much so. Well explained.
Well, and then again, and I probably, like everybody said, I took a lot longer to say that than I would have done if I had a little bit more time to think about it. So yes.
It is. I mean, it's a great quote, and as you say, with many of these quotes now, I feel like the internet becomes a wormhole, because you're like going, but where did it originate? And I remember even looking at some research pieces, and I can't remember what it was now, but I ended up in this internet echo chamber of 3 articles that were all quoting each other. And I ended up going, I can't even quote that research because I can't find the origin of it. And it is something that in today's world, I feel is really important that we cement our knowledge in truth and fact as well, and not just make things up. Because God, we all know in the UK last week, listening to Trump and his inauguration, trying to declare that the internet was born in the US. Rubbish. It was born in Manchester by a Dutch guy at the university with research, and continued in Cambridge. That's the truth of the origin story. But he doesn't care because he wants to make everything American amazing, despite it being a very young country.
Absolutely. Even the Gulf of Mexico is now the Gulf of America, in his words.
So I'm like, I think everything, we've got a responsibility, though, to actually go, where are our sources, and quote them. And when we gain inspiration from others, I don't believe it diminishes you. If anything, it heightens you. If you can say, this is an idea that I've built upon from somebody else because I've been reading into their work, but you're progressing it forward. And that's one of the ways you can show yourself as just moving the conversations forward, basically, and just making the world a better place. But let's quote our sources always, if we can.
Absolutely, and this is and we're gonna get to books anyway. But one of the books is Austin Kleon's "Steal Like an Artist," I think it is, and show your work. I think it's the same sort of thing. It's this is how we get better at what we do, is by expanding on the work of others and expanding, the standing on the shoulders of giants quote, etc. It's the same sort of thing. This is how we get better and do it. So it's brilliant. I love that idea, and it's very much something I spend a lot of time. Like you say, you could go down the rabbit hole of the internet, but it's there's a lot of good, cool information out there, and you've got to be careful about it. And we won't go down the AI route of the what do they call it, the hallucination
hallucinations in AI. I just think that's such a fantastic term, and it's meant to be as high as 20% AI hallucinates, which is a crazy high statistic considering the number of people who seem to just trust it.
Absolutely. And you ask it its source, it comes back with absolute certainty, a whole list of links and it looks like the end part of the reference part of an academic sort of article, etc. And you then, but if you actually chase them, they're complete and utter fabrication. So be very careful about what you believe from these AI people. One of the other things, just before we go on to the final bit where we want to talk about in the book, is very much the idea behind the Halftime Huddle is these great conversations to help and support people in the midweek, Wednesday midday hump day, to help and support them by having these conversations, to share the fact that everyone out there is going through the same sort of thing. I'm interested to know, like you say, with your idea of managing energy for it, so how do you keep your focus and the energy going through, through the whole week? What do you do? Is there anything you do to keep you focused day by day?
Very much so. It's not time blocking per se that I do, but more task blocking in the sense that I need to make sure I only have a certain amount of time that might be sat in front of the computer, a certain amount of time that is connecting with people, because actually the connecting and the conversations does also energize me. And sometimes I do feel that, when you're in that slump and you're like going, oh, I can't get on, your brain isn't ready to do that task that you need to get done. It's sometimes by having a conversation can pull you out of it. So I do balance. So for me, it's more about what I do in balance through the week. And one of those things as well is I make sure I just exit my door and I go for the walk during daylight hours. Because for me, it's quite important just to see, even if it's a grey day, even if it's raining, but getting outside and having that space. And it's space to think. For me, if I go on a walk, it is not a walk with a podcast in my ear or with music in my ear. It is very much a time to decompress and think, because I find that, and in fact, I believe there is science and research behind this, that when you're up and moving, your brain starts working in different ways. And this is where even like walk and talk conversations, if you can, with people who are local to you, will come up with new ideas, because when we're physically moving, it helps our brain think better as well. So when I'm feeling stuck, I know that's the point, just to lift myself up and head out. And that balance of what I do within the day will vary. So I do tend to keep an eye. I do live in England, so I keep an eye on the weather. So if it's completely chucking down all day, I'll just go, well, when's it less heavy, to make the walk slightly more enjoyable. But otherwise, it's how can I balance my connection time with people, having conversations like this, serving my clients, which I do in a couple of different ways as well. As I've kind of mentioned in this, is we sometimes get on calls, but a lot of it is asynchronous, where I might record a mini video to give them feedback on something, or I'll be writing inside a document. So having these different ways, I find, fires up my energy. Whereas if I did everything in exactly the same way, my energy slumps. So for me, it's really important actually having a mix of different things. So I'm not very good at batching everything in one day. Like I couldn't do all my video recording in one day. I tend to do video recording first thing in the morning when I'm just naturally more energetic, whereas I'll do other things later in the day. So yeah, it's about mixing things up. I've always wanted diversity basically in my week. And that's one of the things I love about running my own business, is I get to pick and choose when I do these different things.
Absolutely, and I love the idea of finding your own energetic level to do the things that work. And you're very right about being in the UK in terms of having to make sure you can pop out in the least wet time of the day, really, basically, especially this time of year, and trying to do it in the light. I'm looking outside over there in my room, and at the moment it's light but grey. So
yeah, I love the summers when I can go, oh, well, if I've been busy, I can still walk out at 8 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock.
No, absolutely. We've recently moved, and we're down on the south coast, and it's lovely. We get an opportunity to go out and sit and look at the sea, which is quite nice.
Lovely. That's on my dream in the future, to get closer to the sea again. I have lived near the sea in the past, but this season of life and balancing with kids meant we had to be in a certain location which was closer to parents as well, looking after elderly parents. We all juggle, right? And that's kind of the truth of why, when we're running our own business, we might be juggling kids or parents or other caring responsibilities just as much as running our own business.
Absolutely. Very, very true. I mean, and that's, it's one of the strengths of running our own business. I mean, there's a lot of to be said about being able to manage your own time and manage your own schedule when you're running your own business, and that's something sort of that is almost like a double-edged sword in terms of that, you know, you have got the time to do this, but it also means that you've got to manage your own time. Don't have managing time for you, and I love the idea of you rephrasing time blocking in terms of task blocking or etc., which is a great way of reminding about you can't manage the time, but you can manage what you do with the time. That's the secret. Yeah. So brilliant.
Yeah, and I've just found that, you know, I've tried the time blocking thing and gone, that doesn't work for me because something will overrun. And if I get into hyper focus on something, on a task, that's where my focus should be. So some of it is just leaning in to where is your brain at. And I do believe that, you know, a lot of people go, oh, procrastination's bad. But I'm like, procrastination is our brain's way of telling us we haven't formed the answer yet. So you're not ready to do that. So long as you're obviously not right up until the deadline, but then adrenaline normally kicks in and brings that out. But for me, if I start feeling, oh, I'm procrastinating, I've got all these windows open, I'm not doing anything, that's my nudge to go, get out and go for a walk. Because on that walk, the solution will come to me as I'm moving and just getting going. You know, I don't go running, I don't do any of that, but I do love walking, and just the fresh air, it just helps your brain move in a different way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there is definitely a distinction between avoidance and procrastination, because, like you say, you know, if you get to the stage where, yeah, some things do take a while for your brain to process, and by having, you know, like you say, it talked about have a variety of things during the day, you get an opportunity to park some of these things that you're working into the backup part of your brain, for it to work on while you're working on something else consciously. So that's a great way of varying your schedule and allowing your brain to do its work in the way that it's best suited for it. And the other thing in terms of this breaking things down is understanding that you take a conscious decision to move from one phase to another phase. It helps your brain recognizing the closing the loops, if you see what I mean. Having open loops is energetically uncomfortable for a brain. So being able to say that, you know, I've closed the door, I'm going for a walk, this is my walk stage, closes that loop. So yeah, so there's a lot of good ideas behind there. So thank you very much for that. And we're getting to my favorite part is just to premise this is very much a book recommendations on favorite books is a great way, and it's for me to pick up. I love books, and having people to recommend books is great for me to add to my library. But I think I love this and I've nicked this from Tim Ferriss on his podcast. He says it's all very well if you ask someone what their favorite book is, often it's the book that they're reading at the moment. Whereas if you ask someone a slightly different twisted sort of way of doing this is, what have you recommended for people or gifted to people? It sort of brings a bit of a longevity to the idea, and it's something that you rather than the book you're excited and reading at the moment, this is a book you want to share with other people. So my a final bookend question, pun intended, is what is the book that you have most gifted or recommended?
So the one I've most recommended and is actually this one, Playing Big, All My Hands in the Way, by Tara Moore. And as much as it is female centric, I'm like, men, everyone needs to read it, because the concepts that she brings is about playing big. It tackles that piece of how we subconsciously can hold ourselves back. Of some of it touches into the imposter syndrome piece of like, I'm not ready, I'm not good enough. But she gives some really good actionable pieces of like, actually, how are you going to make leaps forward in your business? So this is where it sort of syncs up, and you can see why I then ran a summit called SuperFast Authority, because it's what are these leaps that she talks about that you can make in your business to actually move you out of thinking and into action. And for me, the whole premise of everything I do is like, brilliant, you've got ideas. Now what? What are we going to do? How are we going to move them into action? And Tara Moore in her book really helps show about, well, what do those leaps look like for you in your business? And how can you bring it into something that can be done in shorter time frames as well? Because quite often everyone goes, oh, but a big leap is like, I'm going to go from now to speaking on a keynote stage. And, and that's really hard to achieve in one leap. Very, very few people do that. But could you instead go and speak at your local chamber of commerce or your Toastmasters and put yourself forward? It's like, what is the leap for you? And before you know it, when you've done a few of these leaps, rather than saying, oh, well, first of all, I've got to do some training and I've got to get this done and then I've got to do that. It's like, well, no, like if I want to share my story on stage, what's a leap I could do with that? Well, the first thing you could do is write your story and publish it yourself on your own website. Then you could send it to a newspaper. There's ways you can take these leaps. And this is one of the reasons that I really love her book, because she also talks about, I'm just reading, like there's lovely little pieces. I don't know if you can see this, but there's like action grids at the end of the chapters and journaling questions that again move you into action. So I find it a very practical way, particularly if you're working in business, to just step up and think outside of yourself and where is that leap and where you want to go. And I have read other books on a similar theme. I'm sure there's some others that are popping up in people's brains. But the way Tara Moore approaches it, I just really resonated with. So she's my most recommended book. I do have a few others, obviously, but I'll keep to that one today.
Well, the others sort of encourages me to recommend that we follow this conversation with another conversation later on sometime, so we can have a look at the other recommendations. But thank you very much for that recommendation. And as you were saying it, it reminded me, tying this all back to originally the SuperFast Authority is the talk we had with Andy and Pete.
Yes.
Around sort of playing big, and you're talking about sort of they were also about asking big. What's the big
absolutely.
ask?
The cheeky ask is like,
Yes.
or the remarkable ask in their terms of like how, when you're going to do something, make yourself stand out. Because most people take the easy, boring option basically, and they go, yeah, I'll just send an email. Like that's not going to get you anywhere.
No, indeed. So thank you very much. And like I said, I will definitely check that up. I will put a link in the comments on the notes on this as well to show that book and share that book as well. So and with that in mind, we could carry on for ages conversation. But for those people who want to follow the conversation with you, where's the best place you would recommend for them to follow up and to contact you and connect with you?
LinkedIn really is probably my go-to place for conversations, because I feel we can have good, deep conversations there. So yeah, my name, Susanna Reay at LinkedIn, and my website, if you're intrigued as to what I do or you want to grab some of those free resources, everything's on my website, and that's susannareay.com. So those two would be the best places.
Brilliant. And again, I've got some links there. One thing I wanted to say, you mentioned that you're doing a free workshop coming up as well. So what's
Yes.
that about? Yes, almost forgot that, didn't you?
I did. I'm always doing so many things that I'm like, oh, what's going on? So I do have a free workshop that I run these probably every couple of months. So I do say, if you're free, it's on the 13th of February. And it is a very interactive, fast moving, get your pen and paper workshop where we look at how to create a scalable and standout offer that actually sells for your business. So it is a pen and paper, fast moving, and it's my way of gifting to people who might be at the start of the journey. Maybe they're not ready to invest, but if they do want to invest and work with a coach, you get a really good idea of my energy, my way of working as well. But if you're not ready, this workshop alone will power you up and send you flying. And that ultimately is my joy, is to help others just really recognize what their unique expertise and magic is and how they can show that more simply to others.
So brilliant. And again, I think I've got a link for that. I will put in the notes as well, or the comments below, so that anybody was around on the 13th can come along and experience that. So thank you again for sharing the last hour or so with us, talking about it's flown by. I just looked at the time and I thought, blimey, that's brilliant. So it's been great talking to you. I would definitely recommend those who are listening, to chase up Susanna, connect with her on LinkedIn, check on her website, and keep an eye out for the next summit she's running in November. It's well worth popping in and coming along. You don't have to be like me and go to everyone, but do go to do go to them, and you probably get hooked anyhow. So, but
thank you. It's been a pleasure.
But lovely to see you. For those people who are watching this regularly, I will say thank you very much for coming along. We have Merowyn Sayers coming to talk next week, which will be brilliant. I look forward to seeing you then. But thank you again to Susanna, and we will see you next week. And hopefully you will have the next half of your week will be the best half, and we will see you next week.